You're listening to Faith Connections podcast, where we are dedicated to connecting you to your faith. And now your hosts, Chris and Mari Torres.
Hey guys, thank you for tuning in to Faith Connections. It's Chris and Mari
Torres.
Welcome back. We hope that you enjoyed last Tuesday's message. Take the help. You had an opportunity to really learn from an expert, Ayanna Brown. And so, we hope that you were able to see that as an encouragement to knowing when to take the help. And it's okay to ask and take help.
Yes, guys. So I hope you've been enjoying these episodes from our conference that happened here in Poteet. Of course, if you didn't get a chance to make it, this is a great opportunity to tune in and see the great speakers that we had. And the next speaker is just another great one. And the message is going to be just as good. So we hope you take away. If you receive it and are encouraged by it, please connect, send us a message, let us know what you liked or what you agreed with or whatever the case may be. If you know somebody that's going through something right now at this very moment and they can benefit from it, please share. That's why we're called Faith Connection. Share it, get connected, connect them, and hopefully they will be uplifted and encouraged. But again, thank you guys. And this is just another great speaker that we have lined up here.
Yeah. So our next speaker is Dr. Luisa Caprano. Man, she has an amazing testimony, a story about trauma in her life and how she overcame, how she turned trauma into triumph. Man, and she has a book. It's called Push Then Breathe. The Making of an American Doctor. So I encourage you to buy it, to look for it. It is an amazing book with her story. You're able to kind of learn, right, what she went through and how she overcame. So I hope that you're encouraged. If you know someone who has suffered trauma in their life, make sure that you share, you like, you subscribe, and you send this over to them. Thank you for tuning in.
Wow. Let's just take it down a notch. Thank you, Maribel. But I feel like I'm so lofty and I'm wearing some kind of a glow. I'm Luisa. I am a mother of two beautiful sons, the wife of a retired fire chief, and the daughter of an the most amazing mother in the world. So now that I have proved to yourself that I'm a human just like all of you, besides all my accomplishments, I want to thank you for inviting me to be with you today. I'm honored and humbled to speak in front of you and share with you my story. The desire to help people inspired and fueled my calling to become a physician. Becoming a physician first, an OB/GYN, and then a maternal fetal medicine specialist has empowered me to help women and patients everywhere. Taking care of patients, of people of all ages, and from all walks of life, gave me the privilege that cannot be equaled by anything in my life. The power of doing good, the power to help people heal, the power to have them see that their most prized possession is their own health. Writing this book, my story, Push Then Breathe, Trauma, Triumph, and the Making of an American Doctor, helped me take this desire further. And that is to help people regain their spiritual and mental health. You see, we are not whole unless our physical and mental health are together in wellness. As a trauma survivor, women's physician, an accomplished human, I have unique insights that I will share with you today, how trauma affects our lives and our bodies, and how we can overcome the trauma and triumph over it. I was 18 years old when I came to the United States. From the outside, we see America like the land of milk and honey. I remember stepping out of the airplane in the gloomy New England weather that spring, and how I realized how much I missed home. I was here in a strange land, hearing a language I could not speak or understand, surrounded by people I didn't know. 37 years ago, I came here for a 2-month visit from communist Romania. I came to meet and get to know my father, my biological father. My father was a former political dissident who escaped Romania and settled here in America. At the end of this visit, my plan was to go back home to the place and the life I knew, to be surrounded by the people I loved had loved me back. Go to medical school and become a doctor. To me, that was very straightforward. Well, my life really didn't plan that way. I was almost 19 years old when my life turned upside down. See, my father had completely different plans for me, to take all the chances away from me going back home. Shortly after my arrival, my passport was taken away. I was coerced into changing my name and file for political asylum here in America. You see, some of you may not know, but when you file for political asylum means that you are persecuted in your home country. So when you do that, you actually become an enemy of the state, my birth country. And that zeroed practically all my chances to go back home as a free person. For the following 6 years and 11 months, I was subjected to continuous mental, physical, emotional abuse and isolation. Things continued: rape, abortions, complete financial dependence. I was alone. This and so much more happened to me for 2,422 days, to be exact. In the 1980s, a case study was published in the American Journal for Neuropsychology. It was named Learned Helplessness. Next slide, please. In this study, dogs were placed in cages and locked up. Then electrical shocks were applied to them. They were called the inescapable shock. The researchers arrived to this profound discovery. After repeatedly shocking the dogs, they opened the cages, expecting that the dogs would run away. Well, they didn't, because these dogs, became broken. And when the possibility of them to go out and regain their freedom arose, physiologically and psychologically, they could not take that viable choice. Then the researchers did take another group of dogs, but this time they didn't shock them. They just opened the cages, and these dogs bolted out of the cages and ran away to freedom. Sometimes we fall 10 times before we get up once. Sometimes we have to stay there for a moment to pick up the pieces in order to get up. But make no mistake that pausing and giving up are not the same. Emotions and trauma are closely interrelated. Trauma affects our emotions in many, many ways and leave very, very big marks, long-lasting ones. When I think of trauma and emotions, the 7 stages of grief come to mind. You probably heard of them. Lots of people who are giving terrible terminal news experience them. I am going to slowly take you through all the stages that I personally experienced through my journey. And some of them may actually resonate with you. A few days after I arrived to America in that 2 months visit, I got the news over dinner that I was not going to go back home. And my reaction, I was shocked. I just froze like the deer in the headlights. What are you talking about? Where is this coming from? What's next? But then, as these affirmations were coming more and more, almost every day for the next couple of weeks, I realized that this is no joke, and I went into denial. I'm like, oh no, I must be having a really bad dream here. I am dreaming, this is really creepy, but I will wake up and everything will be like it was before I got here, the same. And when I realized that that is not going to be the case, I became very angry. Anger sets in. I was angry, but then I realized later on that I wasn't angry with you or the circumstances. I was angry at myself, with myself. And you know why? Because I made the error to believe, to trust my own blood. So I started bargaining. We start bargaining when we are in these dire situations. Make that pact, right? What can I do? What would I do to make it better, to fix it, to get my life back again? And in my own 18-year-old mind, it made so much sense. So I said, I will stay under two conditions: that we'll get our family back together and my mom will come here, and that I will become a doctor, that you will help me become a doctor. And the pact was made. The only thing was, I really made the pact with the devil because it was never happening. And when I realized, again, once I applied, I put my application in with immigration, that is not going to happen. Guess what happened? Depression set in. I become so deeply depressed. Apathy. Hate turned into motionless. I didn't care. I just became a walking specter. I just going through the motions. Because guess what? I accepted my fate. We accept our fate. We accept the nature of our circumstances. And then we're stuck. But there's one more. It's always this one more thing that the Pastor Lugo said, that Diana brought it up too. It's hope. Is that little seed of hope that we all have within us. So we just have to reach in. I reached in and I clung on to it, because otherwise I would have become a statistic. And I started a building inside me. I started learning the language. I started getting a job. I started making connections. Because hope is the desire, our desire, and our belief that good will overcome. And that's why God left us with that. Everything else is what we believe in. I believed in the power of hope, in the power that God will help me go through this. The impact of trauma in our relationships, it's very, very far and wide. Trauma survivors have exceedingly difficulty making and maintaining impactful and healthy relationships. Why? Because we are afraid to trust. Because we become very hypervigilant. Like, okay, when is the other shoe going to drop? I'm sure it will be, or this is just not. Everybody has an ulterior motive. So we become very untrusting to others. We don't ask for help. Not only that, we isolate ourselves. And why is that? Because we are afraid, we are ashamed, and we fear re-traumatization. Just remember that we humans only lash out for two reasons: pain and fear. Just take a moment in your daily life and just see, why was it just a jerk? Like, why did I react that way? Because what looks in the surface, it's truly, a lot of times has an ulterior motive deep built in our subconscious. We trauma survivors have a hard time, like I said, asking for help. So when we should ask for professional help mentally or physically, we resist until we are like really placed against the wall, and until all the stressors are overwhelming us, and we have to finally say, okay, I just can't see any way out. I gotta go and get help. Because we think that that's how we become. We take the stressors, we think we can contain it. So we take it, analyze it, process it, and bottle it in. Oh, it's going to be quieting down. I'm going to keep a lid on it. But like everything else, after a while, it starts bubbling up. So how does trauma impact our physical and mental health? Trauma, physical, and mental health are very closely interrelated and feed upon each other into a very vicious cycle. That is why trauma survivors, abuse survivors, survivors of neglect have a long-standing list of psychiatric and organic afflictions. As a women's physician, I see this. I have patients who have come in to me with all types of afflictions, whether real or perceived. They have myalgias. They have chronic diffuse pain syndromes that we cannot figure out in medical field how to take care of it because we cannot find an organic cause. They have somatization disorders. Again, in our medical arena, we consider these patients non-compliant or, quote, it's all in their head. How many times did you hear, from your friends or family, oh yeah, this doctor doesn't really believe what I'm saying. It tells me it's all in my head, right? So these patients, really, it's not in their head. What happens is they have such a difficulty verbalizing their emotions. They are ashamed and fear that they're going to be ostracized by saying what exactly happened to them in their past or in this present. So they really avoid coming to the physician and they simply cannot withstand even the most simple women's health visits and exams. In pregnancy, trauma-ridden patients have extremely high-risk pregnancies. They go numerous times to emergency rooms for their afflictions. We call them frequent flyers. They have preterm labor. They experience extremely complicated pregnancies. They have small for gestation babies. Their diagnoses become a burden for them, for their babies, and for their pregnancy, both psychologic and metabolic. As a trauma survivor, as a woman's physician, I know what these women are going through. They have problems with depression, anxiety. They stress eat or stress starve. They get into these relationships that they are very vulnerable into getting into them, but staying. Relationships that further affect their mental and physical health. Unstable, they are being taken advantage of. Addictive behaviors, addictive personalities. This is the long-standing imprint of trauma, of how trauma affects our bodies and our brains. So you may say, Jesus, it's all so dark and gloomy. Can you give me something else? Well, actually, there is. It's called post-traumatic growth. And it is. It is true 100%. Post-traumatic growth is the ability of a person to overcome their personal past and present trauma, abuse, neglect, trials, and tribulations, and grow. Find a new sense of purpose through strength and resilience. And you may wonder, how is this possible? And I will give you some tips. But first, I like to teach by stories. A year after I regained my freedom and became an American citizen, I had the chance and now the freedom to invite anyone I've ever wanted to come to America. That was in 1994. So I invited my mom. That fall, late fall, winter, she came to visit me for the first time and to visit America. One day, it was Thanksgiving Day. We were getting out of the Mass. It was snowing in Manchester, New Hampshire. We were at St. Anselm College. We were walking down the path. And all of a sudden, she asks me, "What about your school? What about your dream, Luisa?" I always do this. I'm sorry for being emotional, but you'll understand why in a second. It was such a simple question, right? With such a heavy meaning. It came and hit me like I just suddenly fell through the ice into a frozen lake. At that time, I was working 3 jobs, struggling, paying my bills, working and living from paycheck to paycheck, trying to hide my scars and my pains. Because you see, nobody knew what I went through for the previous 8 years. So I went, looked at her, and I said, "Mom, don't you see? Don't you see what I'm doing and how I'm struggling?" And you know what? She said nothing. She didn't ask me anything else from that day on. She didn't, because that's how moms are. They know when to stop and not say anything else. It's like dot, 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 okay? But then in that moment, I realized that I was refusing to admit that I gave up. That dream that kept me alive and sane for 7 years was going away from me like a mirage, was moving more and more distance because life was taking over and it was burying me. This is how little it takes. This is how one act of kindness can turn total darkness into a blazing light. That moment, I went from being helpless and feeling horrible, a horrible, destroyed human being, to feeling limitless and with potential. From giving up to finding agency. That day, that moment, I started believing hoping again, and having to find my mission. 8 years later, at the age of 34, I graduated medical school. I became a doctor. So yes, we can do it because I did it and I know that you can too. Trauma survivors can and should rewrite their lives, rewrite their stories. They should believe that they can. First, we have to acknowledge our experiences. First, we have to say, yes, we have this issue that we have to deal with, and we cannot keep it wrapped up. Because we cannot go around it, we cannot ignore it, and certainly we cannot run away from it. As God, I like the saying, I just ran into it about a month ago. It says, God may brought me to this, it will help me go through it. And it's so true. I have to tell you, I had a problem with God. Okay? I was an extremely devoted Catholic when I lived in Romania. I used to go to church 3-4 times a week. I was singing in the choir. I was first singer. I was a soprano to the right of the org. I did everything right, I thought, and then I came here. Why? Why did this happen to me? So when I stopped asking the why and I started making peace with my history, I started healing. Because if we don't do that, if we continue to stew in our past, we are going to keep telling ourselves, I deserve this. I got this because of my actions or my words. I am no good. I am damaged good. Well, you know what? That is not true. It's simply not true. And we have to believe that. Is what we believe in, that is going to happen. If we believe in good, good will happen. If we believe in bad, only bad happens because we draw it. It's just the force of the universe. My tenets that I will share with you are: grab onto your dream, find it, bring it to light, and run with it. The harder the journey, the sweeter the rewards. Because you deserve it and you owe it to yourself. Find your anchors and fill your cup. What is that? I love running. That's my fix. Exercising, praying, gardening, singing, meditating, walking, listening to the birds, whatever fills your cup. Be selfish for 30 minutes a day to yourself. Give this to yourself as your gift and fill this cup of joy that you make time to give it to yourself. Because otherwise, you become depleted. You can just sap joy from dwindling joy, correct? It's like a phone. You got to charge it every day, otherwise it's going to run on empty. And the third one, find that one person that believes in you, that you can trust, and call them close. For me, it's always been my mother, and now my husband. They are there for a reason, so we can lean on, so we can cry with, so we can laugh with, so even get a kick in the butt when we need to. I call them lighthouses. So I can tell you through my journey that I shared with you today, yes, it was very hard in the beginning and still is. This talk first started as a lecture. I wrote it down and I was like, ooh, this sounds like a lecture. I don't think people want lecture. Just people want to talk, to hear me out. So that was my reason. My reason was to share with you my insights, how we can all overcome and achieve what we are always meant to achieve. Because I believe I was born with wings. I believe I was born to thrive in life, not just survive. So you can too. So those 3 questions, then I wrote them. Find the answers that you believe they mean a lot to you. And if you want to know the answers I have for my own questions, just find me at lunchtime and I can tell them to you. In conclusion, I will leave you with these words. Îmbrățișează posibilitățile, cucerește și influențează lumea ta. That means embrace the possibilities, overcome and influence the world, your world. That's all I have. Thank you.
Awesome.